But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
And we are live. You know what? I just realized I had a new intro and I didn't use it this time. I have a new animated intro for the Fireside Chat, but I will use it on the next one. So hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and I am here with Poe the person. That's her YouTube identity as well as her Twitter identity. I'm sure it's on her birth certificate as well. And so welcome to the show, Poe. You are, well, I've seen your YouTube videos, but I don't know much else about you. So can you tell us, first of all, why Poe the person?
People always ask me that, and it's a bit awkward because it's kind of a nickname that's something to do with my real name, but I'm not really comfortable sharing my true identity online. So it's like, let's just say it's something that my brothers used to call me. It's not actually a nickname that I like, but when I was coming up with a handle, I just wanted something that was easy to search, like something that would be easy to find, that when someone says it, you know how to type it and there's no confusion about how it's spelled or anything. So just something simple. And I ended up choosing that. And now it's a bit embarrassing whenever someone else asks me and I have to go, can't really say, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, no, that's cool. I mean, we all have weird backstories to our handles. I was just curious because I know, I thought maybe does it have something to do with Poe's Law or something like that? So
I wish I could say it was that clever.
Okay, so guys, for those of you who are watching, we're just going to have a general conversation. I know that Poe might have some questions about me and us here at Honey Badger Radio. And, I'm just getting to know her because I saw your content and I enjoy it. But if you guys have things that you'd like to ask or comment on, please send us a super chat. You know how to do that. It's in the Badger live streams. So if you're watching this on Honey Badger Radio or Twitch or Facebook, go to Badger live streams and send us a super chat through there. And I will read it aloud on stream. So with that said, I guess, Poe, why do you make the content that you make?
Well, I've wanted to do YouTube for a long time just because it looks really fun and I like the sort of online community stuff. I've never really been part of an online community before. But I had the idea of having a channel for a really long time, and then it started to become obvious that there was a niche for someone like me who was female but more sort of conservatively inclined and libertarian kind of thing, talking about politics, although I kind of held off on it for a while until James Damore got fired from Google for that for the memo that he wrote, or the document that he wrote about the biological differences between men and women. And it was so absolutely my niche that I thought I had to make a video about that. And ever since then, people have been telling me that they like my videos, and I've been really enjoying making them and interacting with people who've been watching them. And I just keep thinking about, interesting things to say and just thinking out loud, basically trying to improve my own, what would you call it? My own mind, just trying to expand my ideas and philosophy.
It's also a good way to, I guess, formulate your ideas and communicate them better. I've noticed that that's something that I enjoy. I used to have really, really big problems with communicating with people and being social and stuff. And in part, working in the field of retail and stuff helped a lot. But doing YouTube,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's very helpful. I still have my own issues though. So.
Yeah, of course. Well, I should have said actually what the reason that the James Damore memo was so kind of poignant to me was that I'm an engineer, and of course I'm a female engineer, and I even though I always see all this stuff online and just in general about how hard it is for women working in tech, how many barriers there are, all of the social conformism that you have to get over, it's just so not what I've experienced, that I felt like it really had to be said. I'm sure there are some women who've experienced that sort of thing, but I really felt like there was my side of the story of just being really encouraged to go into this line of work, and just, it's been easy. It's been really fun, and I haven't had any bad experiences. I don't know any. There's nobody I work with has tried to keep me out or try to make me feel like I'm not part of the team or anything. And it's just been really great. Like, I love my career, and I didn't want people to think that all engineering or all tech was really toxic for women. And like this James Moore stuff, like it really annoyed me the way that the media lied about him. So.
Oh yeah,
that
for
was
sure.
That was a big start for my channel.
And you are in engineering. Yes, that was something else I meant to point out. So you're an engineer, and you have been able to pursue your dream through the education system as well as in the career itself without any obstacles that I guess would be defined as patriarchal institutional sexism, right?
No, I mean the exams and the coursework at university were a bit of an obstacle, but they were no different for me than they were for anybody else.
Exactly.
I'm not saying it was easy, but it was made no more difficult because of my sex.
Right.
That was not an obstacle.
And so you found that was really annoying when you heard that narrative. Okay, so are you in the minority in your field? Like, do you feel like, I mean, I wouldn't say do you feel like one, because that's not really a good way to frame the question. It's more like, can you objectively see that there are fewer women, but that doesn't really, and then like whether or not that does sort of impact you at all? Like, do you feel weird or anything like that?
No, I mean, there's fewer women, obviously. It's at university, there was a few more, and then just in the workplaces, it's been even less. So at university, it was about 10% in a class of 200. There were perhaps 10 girls, and I think 6 of those were Chinese transfer students. Just the university I went to had a big Chinese population, but there were more Chinese girls than there were sort of British girls. And I only have one female engineer, sort of co-worker, someone I work with closely, and she's also a Chinese woman. It's a weird kind of. I think other women in engineering might be able to agree with me. It seems that there aren't that many women in engineering, and the ones who are the engineers who are female are also either Eastern Asian or Indian, Pakistani. Like a lot of them from Asia, weirdly.
I would say I'm surprised, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So this is just like the and you would you say that the ones that and I know that we're talking about anecdotes here, but would you say the ones that got there, like they are in those positions by merit and they're actually competent, just like I would assume you would think that you are?
Well, I hope that I am. Of course, it's really hard to tell. My company wasn't really interested in diversity at all when I joined, or apparently not. They never talked about it, right? They never talked about women in engineering. And then more recently, they've started. I tweeted about it a few weeks ago when they had a presentation about diversity and inclusivity, and that really made me roll my eyes, because I didn't want the company to be associated with that kind of idea, because I thought it might bring it might cause people to wonder if I was there on merit, which is something that really annoys me, is the idea that people that affirmative action might call my own skills into question, like my competency, like my right to be there might be called into question because of affirmative action. But yeah, the other women I know, it hasn't got that far yet, as far as I can tell. There was one intern, a female intern, who was here like a year ago, and she was really terrible. Like I don't know how good her work was, but her work ethic was very bad, and she was gone like immediately. Like they were not like they seem to care about the statistics, but not as much as they care about actually keeping good employees. I think she just didn't want to be there. Like it was it was like a couple of weeks of internship. It wasn't like a proper job. So I think her heart wasn't in it.
Yeah. And also, a lot of times the internships are unpaid, and I think that I don't know about in that case, but so you're making this content, this James the Moore thing happens, it kind of upsets you, you feel like you need to, I guess maybe it was the kick in the ass that you needed to like say, okay, I'm gonna talk about this now, right?
Yeah, well, it's like I've got to start now. It's like it's not just something I'm thinking about doing. It's like it's something I've got to do. If I'm going to do it, it's going to be now, because there's not going to be any better opportunity. So that was a good a good way to get started, like, because you can always have dreams that you never actually pursue if there's no there's no Monday where you want to start pursuing your dream, is there? It's like, I'll start it one day,
Yeah. Somebody in the chat's asking that you say my name to see if she remembers.
Brian.
Yeah. See, she's paying attention. And I mean, if you just call me the Doge, that's okay too.
I did a stream on Friday where I couldn't remember your name, and I was just calling you the little Shiba doggy. People knew who I was talking about, though, so it just goes to show what's in a name, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, again, for people who are new here, I am not a furry. Nobody at Honey Badger Radio is a furry. We are not furries. And Poe, you're also an artist, so and you did like a little drawing. We're actually going to use it in a thumbnail for this once this is done processing. I just wanted to just quickly, because I'm an artist and I love talking about art. I love it. We'll just touch on this briefly. Before the call started, before we started the show, Poe, you were saying that there's something about the way that the cartoon dog is drawn that it doesn't come across. It's obviously an anthropomorphized dog, but it doesn't come across as a furry. And I think I know why, because I've seen a lot of furry artwork, and there's something about the way that furries, like the characters or whatever, are shown. They look like there's an overreaching attempt to make them cute and happy and like wide-eyed with
goofy.
like a little bit goofy, but like there's a clear attempt to do that, and this is more like a drawing that is just trying to replicate the original sort of Doge meme photo where the eyes are looking, pensive and, so I think that's the reason, but I don't know. But yeah, we're not fairies. Yeah. Sorry. So
something that I would pick out is that the snout looks kind of flat, whereas furries, they always have like a big snout. It's like one of those things. It's like a weird signifier that like it just screams furry artwork, like big snout, big eyes.
Yeah,
like you
said,
like
really big eyes, really colorful. Also, furries for some reason tend to like their animals to be extremely colorful, like they stand out in some way.
Yeah, like
and they have earrings and mohawks, and they have blue hair and all that. And this is just a Shiba. So
good job, by the way, though. Whoever drew that, like they really did a good job of not making it look like a furry.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. This wasn't me, but I've done some of the artwork for our channel. But anyway, that's just a side thing I wanted to comment on. So did you said you wanted to talk to me about us, and I'm actually genuinely curious about what you are thinking about, because we've been making content for HBR for years, and our focus is like I want to say it's men's issues. Although MRAs are often, that name is actually not a name we've given ourselves. It's a name that feminists have given us. Okay. So they call them men's rights activists because they think that it's a way of essentially creating an immediate dismissal in the minds of people who hear it. So when they hear men's rights activists, they think, men's rights? What rights do men, not have? And then they sort of dismiss it outright. Although there are some legal rights. I don't even like using the term men's rights activist. I prefer being someone who is an advocate for men's issues, but also I care about women's issues. I think that these things are intertwined. I mean, they clearly are. If one gender wins, the other one, it's not a zero-sum game. So, but if you don't take care of one, then the other one inevitably suffers, is what I'm getting at. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe I said to you that I had some what I said grievances / suggestions.
Yeah.
For like, not for you like specifically, because I've seen some of your videos and some of your streams. I haven't got a complete idea of what exactly you guys are about, but I'm hoping that's something you can tell me about.
Sure.
As we chat. But the name is actually something I was going to mention. So it's interesting that it's not exactly something you identify with, because just straight off, I think when I'll go through my thesis. If you'll give me a couple minutes, I'm going to try and explain everything, like my main grievance / suggestion, and then I really want to hear what your response is.
Okay.
So I listened to a great podcast probably a year ago, completely unrelated to any of this, just talking about how politics is framed in people's minds. And I know it's just a podcast, but it really changed the way I think about politics, the way people discuss politics, which is really what interests me. I'm not really interested in, politics per se. I'm more interested in how people are reacting to politics, recently.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy's thesis is that there are three languages of politics. There's the conservative language, there's the liberal language, and there's the libertarian language, or rather like the left, the right, and the liberal. And he says, without going into it too much, the way that I see a lot of MRAs or just men's rights, men's issues advocates, people like you guys, although not especially you in particular or anyone on Honey Badger Radio, but it seems like men's rights is being framed as a kind of left-wing issue. It's being framed in the language of the left-wing or the liberals or Democrats, whatever you call that in America, because the left-wing sort of frame is to look at the world in terms of people who are oppressed and people who are being the oppressors, or are like the victims and the perpetrators. So obviously, you can see, look at feminism is an obvious left-wing framed issue, because it's the women being oppressed by the men, or by the patriarch, or like the construct of masculinity, even if it's not men in particular always. And I think that's similar to how I see a lot of men's rights activists, or people who say they are, who actually go by that title, and even the names, even having rights in the name, having the word rights, I think, scares away libertarians, because rights is like the government. It's like libertarians just care about freedom, right? Their framing is like freedom and coercion. And I think if you could frame men's rights or men's issues so that it appealed to conservatives and to libertarians, you'd be able to find a lot more friends. Because if you frame it for the left wing has already been taken by feminism, and you might win a few over, but I think it would actually be more beneficial for the men's rights movement, or just for men's issues in general, if you guys, or like just if people could learn to look at men's issues from a conservative standpoint or from a libertarian standpoint. So the conservative standpoint, the framing, by the way, is the third one, is looking at things in terms of like barbarism and civility, like civilization and barbarism. And I don't quite know how to do it for that. It's a bit tricky. I don't really know how to frame men's rights in that frame. But I think you could find a lot of friends in the libertarian movement if you could pitch men's rights or men's issues in terms of coercion and freedom, which is the sort of frame that really appeals to libertarians. Like drop the name rights, and then like try to frame it as in like, these are the men, like this is the freedom that the government is taking away from men. So for instance, when child services stops men from seeing their children, that's something that would really trigger libertarians. Like that's something libertarians could get really agitated about. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Any reaction to that?
Yes, I have lots to say on this. So actually, I find this a really interesting thing that you're proposing or thinking about. So, okay, let's see. There's so much to unpack here. So, it's funny that you should say that MRAs are, they kind of like package their arguments. And look, if I misrepresent you, let me know. Like I may not be using the right words, so I'm not trying to misrepresent you. So, it appears that MRA language, because we use the words rights, because of the, we're talking about what appears to be gender equality, like on the surface, it sort of like appears to be packaged as a left-wing position, or at least we're coming at this from using left-wing language. Is that what you would, okay.
Using the word equality as well, that's like a left-wing kind of word.
Yeah. So, and I actually, it's funny and it's interesting because feminists and SJWs, which I think they're basically the same, characterize the men's rights movement as right-wing, if not far-right. And they do it all the time. And it's actually, they've been doing that with men's rights activists, Gamergaters, and, you know, basically anyone that they disagree with for years. And it's actually got me thinking a lot about the left-right paradigm and actually a lot of other stuff. So I'm going to throw some other stuff out there. So first, let me try to answer your question. The men's rights title and the discussion around rights, which I agree with you, it suggests government intervention. It suggests using the state to essentially give things to men, right, by force, because that's what we're talking about. And I am a libertarian, right? So I agree with that. What I think that men's rights is best served by, and the arguments that I always try to frame it as, is in the context of men being free from the state, because things like you were saying, child custody, things like alimony, things like child support, things like, you know, wrongful paternity. These are all the divorce courts. All these things are basically, you know, the use of state power to coerce men. In fact,
and incarceration is the
incarceration, one as well. Obviously, yes. Which, of course, the majority of people in prisons are men, overwhelmingly, and it's actually the one place in the world that actually has a real rape culture. But we don't acknowledge it as such. So obviously this is, and circumcision too, with the right to bodily autonomy. I think that is also a men's issue.
That's a big libertarian thing as well. Like, I think you get a lot of libertarians on your side if you there's a big crossover there.
Yes, exactly. And I think that if libertarians don't think that men's rights activism, and I'm only using that term so people know what I'm talking about, if they don't think that those things are overlapping, I think one could make the argument that we're not marketing it well enough, but I also think that they have to know that these things are absolutely compatible. In fact, this gets to something even bigger. Maybe you can, like, since you saw that podcast and maybe you've been thinking about this stuff a bit, you can sort of respond to what I'm about to propose. I think the discussion around politics and the terms that we use has been twisted up in such a way that I don't think words mean what they're supposed to mean anymore. And I think that it's all screwed up. So let me propose it this way. I brought this up with Cassie J when I was at the last international conference on men's issues. Do you know who Cassie J is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we were talking about this because she's often said, you know, she's been accused of being right wing and everything. And she often makes the defense, you know, but I'm a registered Democrat. And, you know, obviously she was a feminist for many years, etc. And I was talking to her one night at the ICMI and I said, you know, we were just talking about politics. And the thing is, I think that the discussion of politics itself in terms of left, right, liberal, conservative, etc., I think that's actually kind of a lower form of discussion in terms of like what is important for, let's say, our society going forward. I think a political discussion is actually a reduction of that. I think that to talk about things in a larger, more principled way is, I think, is more productive. But I think that we tend to reduce things to polemics because we want to simplify the state of things. But anyway, here's the thing I was thinking. So I asked Cassie J, I said, do you believe that, and I know that you're in the UK, right? So you guys have different terms for this. But here in the US, we have two parties. Now, yes, we know that there is a Green Party and Libertarian Party, but basically we have Democrats and Republicans, okay? That's the overwhelming majority of people vote for one or the other. And I think that the way we're using terms interchangeably that shouldn't be used interchangeably. And I think that there's a purpose to it. And I think the left is largely responsible for that. I think the left is really good at manipulating language. And I think that they've always been doing that for a long time. As an example, there was when the Berkeley riots happened. I think it was riots, but Antifa was like destroying property and stuff. And everyone was basically freaking out that they were against free speech. and then they would to sort of contrast it, they would bring up the Berkeley free speech rallies that were happening in the 1960s to say, well, look, the left used to be for free speech and now they're against free speech, and this is like hypocrisy and it's irony and everything. Well, I don't think it is. I think that the reason why the left was for free speech in the 1960s was because they wanted to talk openly about communism, and they had to utilize liberal values such as free speech in order to discuss it. And so they did. And we allowed it, right? Maybe begrudgingly, but we did. And so they got to talk about what they wanted to. But now that in California, there are a lot of people that have these far left ideas, and I think that they're, in government, in education, in entertainment. They got what they wanted, and now they're basically trying to stifle other people's speech because they don't want them talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not the point is that the free speech issue for the left at the time wasn't because they truly believed in the liberal value of freedom of speech. It was because they wanted to talk about the stuff that they believe in. And so
that's what they're accusing the right wing of now.
Yes.
Now free speech, they're saying, oh, free speech is just a dog whistle for Nazi ideas.
Exactly. And you know what? The only reason why you would, I think, really do that is because it's what you've done. So you basically think that about other people, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not the same people, though. Like, the left in the 60s is not the students of today, but I get what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that while it's not the same people, I think that the young people from the 60s that may have been there are probably professors, or they taught people who became professors or something. Like, there's definitely a bit of domino effect, I guess, or snowball effect or something that, a trickle down politics. And again, I'm a little bit clumsy here trying to get my thoughts together, but you see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, memes, like, not memes like jokes. I mean, like, the idea of, like, memetics, like, the really powerful thing about them is you don't know where these memes start. Like, this idea, like, the first person who said, oh, free speech is the dog whistle for we want to be able to be Nazis. Like, that could have been a professor. That could have been that could have been like the head of some huge corporation who like had some kind of capitalistic desire to spread that message. Like,
it's possible.
You don't know where it starts, and if it's catchy, it'll catch on, and it just sounds like, oh, we're just talking common sense. But like things like that, like those ideas come from somewhere, and it is kind of insidious thinking like, well, where did that come from?
Yeah, and
impressive, like you say.
Yes, and it can come across as like a conspiracy theory or a plot, but I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just there are ideas that get, it's like you said, the ideas get adopted, people like them, and then they just sort of pass them on, and that comes with all the additional baggage. So I was talking to my point was, I was saying to Cassie, I think that let's look at it this way. And I know you guys have your Labor Party. We have the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is left wing, but we also have left wingers. And then we have liberals. And the thing is, I don't think that Democrats, lefties, and liberals are the same at all. And absolutely. I also don't believe that Republicans, right wingers, and conservatives are also the same. And I was proposing this question. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. I noticed that people use this language still, and I just don't think I agree with it in terms of describing things. And this is like somebody who voted for Obama twice and didn't actually have a large interest in politics for many, many years, up until maybe the last 4 or 5 years, that I started to really think about it more. I think that... I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a moment. Right. So I was thinking about the extreme. So when I like the alt-right, okay? I need to say this because I think this is important. I don't think the alt-right is actually right-wing. And I'm trying to think about what it means. So I'm thinking about what it means to be right-wing. And I actually had conversations with professors while I was in school to try to get an idea about this. So, for example, I was saying, okay, so when I see people on the right talking about what they value, and I see people on the left talking about what they value, and I'm trying to do this in a way that is sympathetic to the idea. So I think the left cares about, I think there are lots of people on the left that think the best way to take care of people is through taxation. Like, we need to give to the state and the state will give back. This is like the fairest way.
Well, the rich people need to give it to the state.
Yeah, well, because they want equality, right? They think equality will create happiness. So if everyone gives, and I mean they would frame it as giving, because it pay their fair share, right? That's the meme. Then everyone would be treated more equally, and you wouldn't have people that are hoarding all of the wealth to themselves, like this small percentage of people, while leaving others starving and homeless and hungry, etc. So that's the idea. So essentially, I don't think this comes down to necessarily social issues like gay rights, black rights, and all that. I think that those are different. I think those are different values. I think that left and right, because to imply that the left cares about minorities also suggests the right doesn't. And I don't think that that's true. I think they both do. And I think that they just have different ways. First off, I think they have different ideas on what the scope of the problem is. And they certainly have different ideas on what the solution to the problem is. So it can't be social. I think that the social comes down to whether you're conservative or liberal. I think that those are basically ways of addressing or thinking of social issues. And I think that left and right is all about the amount of trust you put in the state, how much security you want versus how much freedom you want. And so the right wants more freedom, the left wants more security. Now, I won't say less freedom, because I think that it's all about like what are you willing to surrender to get what you want. And I think that the right is typically more open to risk, and they want to, but they want everyone to be free. And I believe, if I'm wrong, let me know, or what your thoughts are. I believe that as you go, if you go all the way to the left, like as far as you can go, you get communism, right? Global communism. That's all the way. That's basically everyone pays into the state. The state, in theory, houses, feeds, and essentially pays for everybody's lifestyle. Okay, but they get all
at least at a basic level.
Yeah, at a basic level. I'm talking idealistically. Yeah. I believe that if you go all the way to the right, you get anarcho-capitalism. You get like full on, like no state, everyone pays for their own roads. Like there's, and anything that involves taking care of other people, is all done through voluntary charity or something, right? Like if you want to help people, it's up to you. But the government, there'd be no government. There'd be like, not that there wouldn't be any rules, but there'd be no rulers. That's what I believe. And I think that libertarianism falls somewhere on that end. Maybe not all the way, but it falls further towards that direction. But I think that what's happened is that the language has become confusing in that, and I think this is on purpose, leftists are conflated with being liberals, because this is how, and a lot of people on the right make that mistake. They call them liberals when they're talking about leftists. And I think it's really important to distinguish the difference, because I think, honestly, for example, I think that one could be theoretically conservative and liberal at the same time, because you might want to conserve liberalism, for example. So I don't think that those are necessarily opposites either. And I think that, and again, when I talk about the extremes, I'm talking about very few people probably agree with anarcho-capitalism, and very few people likely agree with global communism. But I think that those are the two ends, and they have nothing to do with liberalism versus conservatissim. So, and progressivism too, but
where does men's issues fall? I feel like
I know it's okay. I wanted to say that. So, I think that men's issues falls to the right in terms of it doesn't want the government involved, because this is the thing. Okay, and here's a really good example. We'll go with the taxation is theft meme that comes from libertarians. Okay, who pays into the taxes more, men or women? Men, overwhelmingly. Who benefits from the social programs that men mostly pay into? Men or women?
Oh, well, we know that the extremely poor are men, the homeless. So there's the extreme poor, which do tend to be, well, a lot of them are men, right? Yeah. But I know what you want me to say is women, right?
Well, it's true, though, because it's true that the majority of homeless are men. And here's some homeless statistics that I learned recently, too. The majority of the homeless are men, and yet the majority, I think it's something like 80% of the women that are homeless are actually given homes before, and I mean, they're given like government paid homes. And so one of the reasons why there are fewer homeless women is because we tend to take care of them with social programs. And on top of that, the few that slip through the net that end up not getting on those social programs, we still house most of them as well. So yes, the men at the very bottom of society are homeless, but we're also not taking care of them.
Can I just make a point on this? Because I
Yes.
I actually talked to someone. I don't know what it's like in the US, and I know that homelessness is a really big problem there, but we do have homeless here as well. And I talked to someone for a few hours. I'm not an expert, but I talked to someone whose job it was to put homeless people into permanent housing, just like what you're talking about. And just what I want to mention is that there is a basic level of good behavior that you need. And I'm not talking like you have to look for jobs or whatever. You literally just need to like stay off drugs and don't cause trouble with other tenants, right? Like you need to not get into fights, and like just sometimes it's a curfew, like you have to be home before 10, so you're not out begging for money, because that's frequently what happens. That's just the reality. Is like you have to, like, very basic rules you have to stick to in order to get housing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, I don't know this for sure, but if I had to speculate, I'd say that it's perhaps more in the female inclination to abide by those rules. To, for instance, not getting into fights with other tenants. You can see why women who are sort of naturally less confrontational, either because they've been raised that way or because of biological differences, women are less confrontational and not going to get into arguments. And when they do get into arguments, it won't come to like a wrestle. It won't come to blows.
Yeah.
So although I'm perfectly willing to admit, if I saw some evidence of women being given preferential treatment, which certainly seems possible based on the fact that women do tend to get more sympathy than men, that could definitely be true. But I'd just like to posit this alternate theory, or maybe it could be both. Right?
I think it can be both. I don't disagree with you. I also think that the majority of homeless people are usually struggling with mental health issues, or they're veterans or disabled, lots of other issues. So I'm certainly not trying to, and this is another thing that I think is let's say mistakenly attributed to us, is that we are often painted as people who put men in a victim class, and we're not. That's kind of what I'm saying before about the victim oppressor narrative. No. We don't believe that is the case. We just say there are issues that men face, or at the very least, and actually this is probably, it would be even better if this was the way the conversation went. There are issues that are framed as women's issues that are actually just people's issues, and that it's an unfair discussion to have. Like, and I think that because like if I say, we have a problem with homelessness, we don't say we have a problem with male homelessness. Generally, it's always just homelessness in general. Or you'll even see, like, what's even worse is the opposite. You'll say, you'll see something like 3 out of every 10 homeless people are women, and everyone's like, oh my God. So, but I mean, we're not trying to engage in victim Olympics. There's a few reasons for it. One, I find it distasteful. Secondly, I don't think it would benefit men very much, because it's not like people generally don't like the idea of seeing men as victims, and it's
absolutely. I was
going
to say that earlier. It's a sad truth. Like, of course, like it would be great if men who were in trouble could get the same level of sympathy as women who were in that trouble, but just realistically, you're gonna have to go about it a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do see some men, in people who comment on my videos, even though they don't use the word victim, the framing of their comments is very much in a victim sense. And I can obviously understand why they're doing that. Like, they're very angry. They've got, like, I'm not saying that to disparage them. There's nothing wrong with being angry at injustice in the world. There's a lot to be angry about, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone who's, a little bit peeved, but it's just not good PR. Unfortunately, it's not good for your image. Just like, women can get away with it because of X, Y, and Z, right? Women can get angry about stuff, and people just go, "Oh, she's so powerful," like, "Oh, she's so passionate." But men just can't get away with that, and they can't get away with playing the victim. And although that is unfortunate, and it would be great if men could get the same level of sympathy, I think realistically it's just not a good strategy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, at least I don't think we try to do that on our channel. We know it wouldn't work because we understand
I've never
how
seen
this
anyone,
works. Yeah. And also, I mean, I do believe, and I just want to be clear on this, I do believe that anyone can be a victim on an individual level, obviously.
Yeah.
But to talk about, I think, any group as a class being a victim, I think that engages in this kind of collectivist left-wing politics that one, we don't like, two, wouldn't work, and I mean most importantly, I just find it distasteful. I don't like it at all anyway. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, to go back to what your original sort of critique was, I wanted to expand on the whole left-right thing because I do think that it's important. We do use liberal language, but I don't think we use left-wing language. And I see them as different things. I actually believe, this is the funny thing, okay? And again, I believe that leftists are really good at manipulating language, and this is how we're in this position where we have to explain our terms in detail so people know where we're coming from, because the way that the language has changed has made it very difficult to just say without first giving an explanation. I think that men's issues are... And by extension, I think that they're libertarian issues as well. I think that they're absolutely compatible. And more importantly, they're more progressive than anything else that's actually been discussed as a supposedly progressive issue. They're actually, dealing with men's issues in a non-feminist way, because this is another thing. Feminists will say, we do care about men's issues, and here are some examples, but it still exists in that mindset of the patriarchy existing, which there's no evidence for. And secondly, that it puts the responsibility of solving men's problems on men. So it doesn't actually, and again, it also asks for government intervention. Like
I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's it annoys me when I see it.
Yeah. So you saw the Red Pill, right? You saw the film? Oh, good. Well, how long ago did you see it? Like, what made you want to see it? I'm curious.
A year ago, because I made that James Moore video, and then a lot of my comments were about like feminism, anti-feminism, and then just a few people said they were asked me if I said seen the Red Pill, and someone even offered to buy it for me on YouTube, although like logistically that didn't make sense, so I just watched it. But so a few people recommended it, and I thought it would make a good video to review it, and I think it did. One of my more viewed videos on my channel.
I have to check that one out. I didn't see that you actually reviewed it.
Well, it was a while ago. I didn't express myself that well, actually. I got a lot of comments. I'm getting better at making videos, I think. I'm sure you can sympathize.
Yes.
And often, well, I think I'm doing it less now, but what I did back then was just say things off the top of my head and not explain the things that were obvious to me that I did, because it's hard to tell what's obvious to the audience. And if you try and explain every single thing, it ends up making the video really long. So I'm getting better at explaining myself where I actually need to be explained, but I didn't explain myself very well in that video, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I'll still watch it just to embarrass you and like bring it up later. No, but there was a scene in the video. I'll never forget this. Michael Kimmel, he was a male feminist. He was being interviewed by Cassie J, and he said, let's pretend for a moment that men are victims of domestic violence as often at equal rates that women are. And he said it's not, but let's pretend that it is. When in actual fact it is. While women are more, there are more instances. It's not by that much. There are more men that are victims than people want to believe, and surprisingly, in most cases, it's mutual. It's just two dysfunctional people getting together.
Unfortunately,
Yeah. But he says, well, then if it's true that men are also victims, then that just means we need boatloads more funding to open way more way more shelters and so on, which means you should be working with us. But the thing is, this is something that I struggled with, and I was talking to this to Cassie J about this, is that we don't want to do that. Like we would like to avoid creating more tax burdens just because we want to see men's issues addressed. I think that this is actually something that can be solved on a social level that, goes without having to bring in the daddy government to help people out. And I mean, even though but it's not surprising that he proposed that as his first go-to. Well, let's just get the government to spend more money. Well, basically what you're saying is let's get men to spend more money. Like, taxation itself is a men's issue because more men pay into it.
Can I another one that's a bit like that, although not from that film in particular, but I often see the difference in workplace deaths as a men's issue, right? And I agree it is, because it affects men more than women. And regulations that have been put in place by the government have helped prevent many, many workplace deaths. Most of them have been male deaths that would have taken place, right? Because those are the ones that were in the dangerous jobs. Those are the ones that have been saved because of the regulation. And yet, still, because of the different jobs that men and women go into, you still get like 90% workplace deaths are male, right? And although it sounds extremely cold-hearted to say that that's not something I, particularly mind. I mean, it's not great. It's extremely tragic for those men who die at work. And yet, as a libertarian, I kind of have to go like, well, they got that job, right? The government's doing everything they can to make jobs safer, and the employers as well, right?
Yeah, I was going to say the employers. I think that we could. I think that on an employer level, we could make some changes if we got people to be a little bit more sympathetic towards that. But that doesn't mean that men. But that doesn't necessarily negate at all what you're suggesting or what you're saying, because I agree that men do these jobs because they are choosing to take the risk. They know what the risks are that are associated with that job. They know the job needs to be done, and usually they pay well enough that it's worth it, right? But so I wouldn't say we need to make sure that there are never any workplace deaths. I mean, in a perfect world,
that would be great.
Nice. But that's not likely to happen. I mean, we need logs. We need truck drivers, we need engineers that work in these fields, and that's just the way it is. And if there are men, as long as there are men that are, because that's another thing that's a bit of a challenge with being an MRA, is that on the one hand, we want to talk about the issues facing men, in that we'd like for there to be it's not even that we want to rearrange society or anything like that, but it's really that we want people to be more aware that men do have problems, and that there are problems that exist that are not necessarily gendered, and to basically just put that in people's minds to be aware of it. And if we take better care of our men, that doesn't have to be through the state at all, but if we take better care of our men, then we would have a society that's better for everyone, especially our boys, right, when they're growing up. And so, but on the other hand, we also acknowledge that there is a biological reality between men and women, that men will always take riskier work, take risks in general, want to put themselves in danger, and make sacrifices for women. They will always want that. We have always been and always will be gynocentric, and women,
or just for status in general, right? Like they might not actually be thinking about the women; they're just trying to get status as an end unto itself. Because that's what our biology is sort of driving us towards, especially men.
Yes, but I think that drive for status is, even if it's subconsciously, a part of that comes with that is attracting women that want high class, or I guess higher status women in their own way that would be attracted to that. So, and it just happens to benefit us. So it's like, well, I don't want to stop men from working their fingers to the bone to be CEOs, or putting themselves in, if that's what they want to do, and they're going to want to do it. But I think that we can also say, okay, well, we're aware of all this, but that doesn't make them the bad guy. That doesn't mean that they're oppressors. That doesn't mean that women are eternal victims either. We all have to know that on the one hand, we could offer more sympathy, more understanding towards men, and more compassion for them, while also offering women more opportunities to earn respect as opposed to just be given that like by default, which is I think how it's often talked about now, because then a woman like you that actually achieves something isn't simply being celebrated because vagina, but is, you know, like you are earning the respect of people. And I think that those are things that we can shoot for without rearranging our biological reality, which is, you know, what it is, right?
Yeah, I just want to mention one tiny thing you said there. This is just one of the other things I wanted to talk about is that I think you said that women get respect just because, and I think that definitely.
Let me rephrase that, because I don't think it's actually respect, but they get adulation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yes,
I think women, what they get is protection, and they get what you call it, affection. They get like they get sympathy. They get people, they're just likable. People just like
adulation.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I'm not exactly familiar with like the specific usage of that word, but I'll take your word for it. Yeah, it's like that's the thing about like feminism and like the, men's issues, men's rights, whatever you want to call it, is that it's like women have adulation, you could call it, and they want respect, and men have respect, or they can get respect.
Yes, but they want
get
compassion. Exactly. Yeah. They want the compassion. Yeah, this is exactly.
It'd be great if everybody could have both.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, this is the gap, and this is why I think that, like, if we didn't have to call ourselves, well, if I didn't have to call myself an MRA just so people would know what I stand for and what I believe, I wouldn't, because it's not just for men. We also don't. And we'll get into this later, so don't let me forget that I want to talk about this word equality, but that's related to what we're talking about. What we are looking for is, I guess in a short version, is to close the empathy gap for men and also close the respect gap for women.
Respect women, yeah.
Respect women's, but like really respect them. Like,
or allow them to earn the respect if they deserve it, then they should get it.
But the only way to do that is that you have to turn down the idolization a little bit, right? You have to turn it down. Because, for example, when women get props, which is, you know, like they get adulation, congratulations. Yeah, they get that for nothing, for like literally you see it everywhere, right? Like, well, Women's Day comes around and it celebrates all women. Mother's Day comes around,
right?
Yeah, single moms get credit.
You had a kid and you don't have a husband, like.
exactly. And this is just given without anything attached to it. And I don't know if women eat it up, but I would assume that there's got to be a part of them that is thinking, I didn't earn this. I didn't do anything but exist. And yet, this is what most feminists often push for. This is what you see it everywhere. You see it on social media. You see it in the entertainment industry. You see it in academia. You see it in the workplace. You know, it's just sort of like the normal culture that we have around women, where we just give them rewards and shower them with affection and praise, and they don't have to do anything. And so it actually disincentivizes women to do anything, because there's nothing to try to do. It's like, well, I'm a woman, I'm just going to get stuff. And men, they often feel like, well, I'm not going to get recognition just for existing. I have to do something. And so they end up working really hard, but it actually increases the degree to which people have less sympathy, because they can see that they're self-sufficient, so they leave them alone. I wouldn't say that it's zero sum, or that, you know, like the increase in one results in a decrease in the other. But I do think that there is a bit of a cause and effect in both of those ways of seeing the genders.
Yeah, I think the this like props that women get. You're saying that, like, I think that's incredibly shallow, and like women actually know that, right? Like, they, like, you can have, like, you know, Mother's Day, or like, you know, congrats, like, yes, all women, like female empowerment, like you can have all the social media posts you get, but I don't think that, you know, it's just all a signal. Like, it doesn't actually mean anything. I think women actually know that it doesn't mean anything, because what they really want is, like, you know, what everybody wants, which is like a good life, right? They want good personal relationships. They want to have good friends. They want to have a good, well, someone would want to have a good romantic relationship. They want to have a good family relationship. Like they like all of the props in the world aren't actually going to make their lives any better. And I think that's actually, maybe that's something they come to realize like later in life, but it's all empty, right? And I don't think we should overestimate the importance of that empty like signaling.
Yeah, it's like having a beta orbiter that's constantly telling you how great you are. It's irritating. And like women are accustomed to that, right? Because that's another thing about and I think this is another challenge, but I think it's sort of like in our biology. When a woman is young and attractive, men, well, actually, she doesn't even have to be young or attractive. A woman, there are men that like women everywhere, right? There are very few, let's put it this way. There are very few women that could not attract a man. Every woman has men that have a crush on her somewhere, right?
Yeah, if she had no standards. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing about men, though. We don't. Like a lot of men don't, and that's just it. It's not that women are necessarily attracted to them. I'm saying, the opposite. Like men, there's a thirsty man somewhere that likes a woman no matter what she looks like, and that woman may not actually be interested in him, but because of that, you get a lot of men that think, and especially young and experienced men, they believe that the way to a woman's heart is through flattery and is through adulation, because it's something that I think that they actually learn that from this sort of social media adulation that women get by default. So you get these white knight types that will say things like, on International Women's Day, I think we men need to step down and like give position of power to women, or they virtue signal in this empty way.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it is because they want women to like them. And it's actually kind of sad because, first off, it doesn't work. Women don't like that. They generally don't like it when a man doesn't challenge them, doesn't doesn't do those things. But they've been, I think, conditioned to believe that it does work. And it actually has the opposite effect. And I guess what I'm getting at with that statement is that it seems to me is a side effect of the... let's say, a side effect of the way that we sort of like celebrate women just for being women. I think that men do that too because they think it works. And and it's sort of like pushed out there. And especially men that don't think that they have a lot else to offer. And a lot of times their male, how do I put this? Their male pride gets in the way of that. Like they actually believe themselves to be superior. Because... And what I mean is, male feminists are the biggest. They're most guilty of this kind of thing, right? And I think it comes from the idea that they believe that we do live in a patriarchy and that women are genuinely weaker and need a leg up, and it's up to men to do it because men are the only ones strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
So it actually comes across as really
condescending.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I hadn't thought of it either way. I always thought it was just like a guilt, like you tell men like, oh, men have been oppressing women for hundreds of years, and men are just gonna be like, well, most of them are just gonna go, and then but then there's some who are gonna be like, oh my god, I feel so bad about that. Like,
yeah, it is guilt, but it also is buying into the guilt does you do have to work it out in your brain that says, well, yeah, we have ruled the world forever. And we do like run everything. I guess it is because you almost first you have to like have a collectivist mindset where you could be a guy that literally lives in his mother's basement and is eating, I don't know, taquitos from the microwave, and yet you believe that you're superior to women because, another man who happens to also have a Y chromosome owns Apple. And so you have to
landed on the moon, right?
Yeah, or landed on the moon. Assuming the moon landing is real. I'm kidding. But like, so in order to do that, you would have to kind of like internalize a kind of superiority that comes with the guilt, because you have to be guilty for being superior. And it's actually really, really counterproductive. But it does, I think it does work in favor of the feminist narrative, because think about this too. Male feminists, at least, again, I don't I don't have the data for this, so I can't back this up with citations. But from what I've seen, male feminists are the most guilty of making these assumptions about women as a group, and female feminists are also the ones that complain the most about men being condescending to them. Do you think that there might be a correlation between these two things? I wonder about that.
Interesting, yeah. Or like, mansplaining is like, you ever heard like when a man starts like saying like being feminist, like when men try to explain to women how they're oppressed, like that's one of the like more common ways that men are like mansplaining. It's like if a man's explaining how women are disadvantaged or whatever, it's like step aside, like if you love women so much, why you let women talk about women's issues? Like I think you're right about that.
Yeah. I'm being told that I'm doing too much mansplaining in the chat, so I'm talking too much, and no, we're not getting to know you, but okay. I will read a super chat, and then I'll ask you a question. So Hoki Bukisa gives us $1.99, and he says, Poe don't know nothing about beta orbiters, Lenny face. I think he's just joking with you. So, okay, so I want to ask you, and then I'll see if our ideas on this align, so maybe this will work better. Equality. So what's the issue with this word, equality?
I just think it's just something that some people care about and some people don't care about. So it's a value, right? It's not like a fact or I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's not like something you either know about or don't know about. It's not a question of knowledge. It's a question of value. It's like, do you actually value equality or not? And I don't. I think like if you say like, oh, communism produces equality, which doesn't, but let's say it does. I'm like, well, tell me about how it helps poor people. Like, are the people under communism actually richer? Like I'm saying, like, I don't care about equality. I care about quality of life. I care about things like if the things that make poor people richer also make very rich people extremely rich, which is like the story of the last 100 years, or like even going even further back, like the inequality has increased, but standard of living for everybody has increased as well. So that's what I care about. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And it's the same thing with like issues. It's like, I used to care about equality, right, when I was sort of younger and didn't really question this kind of stuff. But it's just one of those things, like, just like, I don't hate the idea of equality. It's just like, it's just a big nothing. It's like, I just don't care. And I think that's a lot of libertarians and conservatives, right? They care about results. They care about like injustice taking place, like coercion taking place. They care about like, barbarism, like I said, like things like going wrong, like people cheating the system. They care about like people not getting their fair dues, they're not getting what's coming to them. And like people conversely, they want people who deserve wealth and affluence and status. They want those people to get that as well. That's the kind of stuff that people like me and like a lot of people like me, that's what they care about. And equality is like, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything to say about it because it's like, I don't really.
Yeah, I actually, I will comment on that. Let me just read this other super chat I just got. Hoki Bukisa gives us $4.99, and he says, I can't explain Whammon unless she's sitting down and I have one leg propped up like Captain Morgan. Thank you, Hoki. So, equality. I think that equality is a bullshit word. I don't think that it's a sentiment. That's all it is. It's a sentiment that people put out there because it makes them feel good, because they believe in what they call fairness. I mean, I believe in the sentiment of fairness in certain cases. Sure. If I play a game with people, I want it to be fair, but that's not the same as equality by any stretch. I think that when
that's
people...
justice.
Yes, justice.
Justice is the important term. That's the one that I actually care about.
Yes, I agree. It's not about equality. I think equality is... it's just a foolish sentiment. It doesn't mean anything. And there are people who say it depends on what you mean by equality. I think that when so I'm getting to the point now where the redefining of words is getting so out of hand that I don't even want to address. I just want the words that mean what they mean. And if we're gonna talk about another definition for equality, then we should call that a different thing altogether. So equality. Okay, if someone were to say, do you mean equality of opportunity? Sure, that's fine. I don't think that we have an issue with that.
That's
though.
Justice. I mean,
yeah, that's just justice, right?
Call it equality of
We'll
opportunity,
call it.
really.
We can call it fairness. We can call it justice. But basically, what you're saying is when you say I want equality of opportunity, you're not even saying that I want to make things easier for certain people to get. You're just saying I want authorities to stay out of the way and leave everyone alone. So that doesn't even have to be called equality. That just means leave me alone. Let me try what I'm going to do because
don't tread on me.
Don't tread on me. Right? No step on snack.
Have you seen the one where it's just it's a snake tied to a battle axe and it just says "fuck off"?
No. I saw one where
I always think about that. Yeah.
I saw one where the snake is drawn really, really, really poorly, like it's like just a squiggle with a little bulb, and it says "avert your path."
It's good. Yeah.
So, but I think equality is it's not useful. I think it's actually got potential for devastating genocidal consequences. I'd rather avoid it. I think that yes, there should be justice and fairness, but I wouldn't call it equality because it just like, I know people who have said, I just want to level the playing field. Well, I hear that and I'm like, so you're saying you want to take the people that you perceive as above and tear them down. Like that's all it means. When you say level the playing field, you're basically saying I want everyone to start at the lowest level. Well, no, I mean, I don't care if someone is out there doing well. It's got nothing to do with me as long as they're not in my way. It doesn't matter. So yeah, equality. That's basically where I stand on that.
Even the metaphor, like the allegory, the metaphor of leveling the playing field. Like you don't level something by building stuff. To level something means to destroy everything.
Yeah.
It's a really terrible expression if what you want is equality. Like you don't to me that just sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big you're holding a big sign saying I'm stupid.
Yes, and lastly about a point about rights, because again, we have rights in the name. It's not given to us, but that's where we are. We're talking about negative rights. When we talk about rights, we're talking about negative rights, just rights from, right? Not rights to, because no one has a right. Well, I mean, we do live in a world where people believe they have rights to things, but we want rights from things.
Yeah.
We want bodily autonomy. We want, the state not to be involved with all the stuff that it's involved with, because every time they get involved, men are the ones that suffer, most of the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely get behind that. And to be honest, I just wish there were more. I don't want to call them MRAs, but I just wish there was more. It sounds like you have a very your ideas match up to mine better than I even thought they would. To be honest, I was kind of getting here ready to get into a little match with you, but I think we're surprisingly in agreement, and I think that's great.
That's okay. Maybe you can disagree with me on something else.
I do have another point I wanted to bring up.
Go ahead.
Do you know Philip Davies in the UK? He's an MP. Yeah, I want to interview him next year when I actually have a day off to go see him in London.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to hold him up as an example of another really great, a really good advocator of men's issues and men's rights. Although he doesn't call himself that, but I was just going to say, as part of my earlier point, that I don't exactly know how he does it, but he does it so well. He doesn't how men's rights activists they often get called crybabies by other conservatives on the internet, like the alt-right, everyone just they're a bit of a punching bag, right? Because it's just called pathetic, whiny men or whatever. Like you were saying, nobody likes a man who complains like a whiny man.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what Philip Davies is doing, but he's really not that. You really couldn't say that about him. And obviously some feminists call him an angry man or a misogynist or whatever. But nobody, I really don't think anybody could seriously call him that because he does it so well. And I was just going to say that I think he's a really good example for other people who want to be persuasive while still being like not compromising on the truth, right? Like he's not like trying to give some ground to the feminists in order to, make a deal or whatever. Like he's not compromising on his values, but he just presents men's issues in a way that it's like hard not to disagree. It's hard not to agree with him. He puts it so reasonably, and he doesn't sound like overly angry, but he doesn't sound like bland either. Like, I just wanted to say he's great. I'm looking forward to talking to him.
Yeah, I think we've had him at the International Conference on Men's Issues a couple of years ago, back in 2016. And I know people, the British Badger Bells, which are basically these British Badgers that I've done shows with. They've actually interviewed Philip Davies a couple of times. So they've spoken to him, and I agree. I think he's very good at staying on task. One of the things that I think works really well is that he presents the case for men's issues in such a way that it is inarguable. You can't argue against it without coming across as a harridan, a harpy. Without, like, for example, I think very recently, like a week ago or two, he talked about how technically, according to some of your documentation, I can't remember which one, male genital mutilation should be illegal because female genital mutilation is illegal.
Yeah, no, I've actually heard that, yeah.
Yes, and he made the case
it is actually
for that.
Illegal in the UK, apparently, but it just happens anyway.
But it happens anyway. And he made that case, and no one dared to stand up and say anything because what are they against? I mean, are they for the cutting of babies? So, like, it's like the circumcision argument is the strongest men's issues position. It's actually supported by a lot of feminists too, because they know that you can't really make a case against it. And we are talking about
it is different
babies.
in the UK, though. By the way, I mean, I'm sure you're aware. It's like speaking out against circumcision is completely different in the UK compared to America, because like most of the men listening to you, they aren't circumcised. Like they don't really even get it. Like most English people, it's like it's just so not a thing, and we don't really have much. We don't have the same kind of Jewish community as America does, so it's not like anti-Semitism isn't that much of a big deal, although it like recently has been because of Jeremy Corbyn and being friends with Hamas, and like for a completely different reason anti-Semitism recently became a big thing in the UK. But it's just not like just not a thing in the UK.
Are you saying for some reason anti-Semitism became a thing, as in it's risen, like there's more instances of it?
No, like it just became something that people talked about. Like, apart from in history class when talking about Nazis, anti-Semitism wasn't even really a concept in the UK because you just don't have that much of a Jewish population.
Yeah, I wonder if so you're saying maybe it's because of the Jewish population, or well, whatever. We'll just I don't know how to. I'm just curious about that.
I just want to say like I've just
nothing to do with Islam.
It's just different in the UK is all I'm saying. Like, even though he could be very persuasive to people in the UK who are just like they've never seen a circumcised penis in their life probably, and they're like, well, what, like why are we doing this, like why is this allowed? Like it's just so much much of a weirder thing here that you can speak out against it, and most people, they don't have the emotional baggage attached to it in the same way that a lot of Americans do. Is what I'm saying.
No, I think it is different. In the U.S., a lot of people practice it. They aren't even religious. It doesn't even have anything to do with religion. It's sort of like normal. I think it has something to do with Kellogg, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. But I think it's starting to change. Like I think the circumcision thing, if anything is going to change, it's going to be the first thing. I hope so too. I don't think there's a need for it, and I think that it's just. Have
you seen it's illegal it's illegal in Iceland now?
Yes, they finally did it then. Did they actually go through and make it legal?
No, yeah.
I remember it was actually being fought against for
a
while by the rabbis and the Islamic population. So, but anyway, so I wanted to like bring something.
About Philip Davies.
Yes. So I want to talk about the whining bit. So this is the thing that I would ask about that. When I see conversations about men's rights activists and the stuff that they talk about, there is a very, very, very common problem that I notice with people who are talking about the men's movement that are not a part of it. And that is that they conflate MRAs with other manosphere groups like MGTOW and pickup artists and
Mm.
just the red pill subreddit and incels, and those all get sort of like, conflated all the time. So I hear about men's rights activists that do a lot of whining, but I don't see a lot of it in my circles. So I guess, and that doesn't mean that it's not happening, but I just don't see it because the people I work with and the people and the places that I frequent, and the people that I talk to, they don't engage in, I guess, what I would consider to be whiny speech. But maybe you can shed some light if there's something that you've seen or if you have some examples.
Yeah, I actually did take a screenshot from a comment that I thought was kind of like a very aggressive comment that I got just earlier today that I thought we could just talk about. It's not so much
Sure.
whiny, it's just kind of angry. But I was just going to say that the comments I'm talking about, like the whiny, whatever, like I'm half going off my own experience. I'm also half just talking about what I've heard other people say. Like what
Sure.
they do conflate incels and all of that. But when I get comments, people do occasionally announce like I am a MGTOW, I am an MRA or whatever. Like, but most of the time it's just like a comment, and I'm just getting the feel like, okay, this sounds like this guy's some kind of manosphere, and maybe that is my putting. To be honest, like I thought of it as like what you call like manospheres. I was thinking of it like one big umbrella of MRA, and then within that there's like sub communities. And I know that's actually not what like MGTOW don't think of themselves as a sub community of MRA, but like to be honest, that's just like that was my mental picture. So when I was saying that, I'm sorry for conflating all those.
It's okay.
Like I said, they don't actually announce like what they are when they leave their comments. So that probably is unfair of me. But
no,
you have to
okay.
understand that from the outside,
yes,
it does all look like one thing, and I'm sure that's a big problem for you. But
it is a problem, but you're absolutely right. It does look like that, and it's very, very, very common. And in fact, there are plenty of people like feminists and journalists and social justice warriors that they like the ability to mischaracterize MRAs because it's easy. They can strawman us. They often probably don't think that there's a difference.
Yeah.
I think that it's probably common to not know, but I think that there's still a willingness to remain ignorant and just say that. And I can't really. I can't really like demand that people like look into it more, but I guess it's like for me, I think that if it comes to issues that are social and legal and administrative, institutional, MRAs will talk about it. If it's stuff that's more like, I'm having problems because I'm in the friend zone, or that's not an MRA issue, right? I mean, we will talk about, we will talk about that sometimes, but it's not like whether or not a man can get laid is not a men's issue. But
then I did a video about advertising recently. I don't know if you saw, like in the UK, it's going to be or not really illegal, but not possible. Like they're not going to allow adverts that promote gender stereotypes, that promote negative gender stereotypes.
Yes.
And the kind of common comment that I got was, I bet this is only going to apply to female stereotypes, not male stereotypes. So, like people complaining of like the way that men are portrayed in adverts, like bumbling buffoons or like soy boys or whatever. Like I get a comment like that, and I'm like, well, I don't think this person's a feminist. Like, I'm guessing this guy, it sounds like he's hung out in one of these manospheres. Like, I don't want to speculate which, but like, that's not exactly MRA, but it's not MRA, is it? It's
right.
Like, it's not like, it could be from an MRA.
It could be. I mean, like, I'm actually inclined to believe that when, for example, something else I heard that was going on in the UK was something about how they're going to be making misandry a hate crime in certain areas. And because they made misogyny a hate crime in certain provinces or what, Nottingham, for example. And what we speculated is that even though, first of all, we don't like the idea of making either of those things a hate crime. We think that that's moving in the wrong direction. And one of the reasons why is that we don't believe that even if you could, like, one of the reasons, but not by any stretch the most important reason, is that we don't think that it will be applied equally. We don't. I think that we don't tend to see misandry when it's happening as often as it might be, and we definitely also tend to see misogyny happening more often than it probably really is. So
Yeah.
I think that would mean that it would probably not actually be applied equally, and that's why we think it'd probably be best if it was just not done at all. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's such a wishy-washy term. Like, how do you define misandry
Yeah.
and misogyny, right?
For me, it's just like another equality. Like it's just another like it's just a word that like just means nothing to me. Like when you say misandry and like misogyny, I'm like, well, was this person treated badly? Like, was this person's rights infringed? Like that's really all I care about. It's like if
Right.
you stab a woman, like that's a crime. Doesn't matter why you did it. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
I agree. That's why I don't like
like
the idea of hate
yeah,
crimes. I don't like the idea of hate speech. I don't like them because I think that a crime is a crime, and making it a hate crime, how does that make it worse? Like, it still happened, right? And how can
yeah,
you prove? The only way that you could like even say that those things, like, it's just like trying to prove misogyny and misandry, okay? You would have to prove intent. You would have to basically be able to prove that the reason this happened is because this person hated this gender by virtue of their gender. There's
yeah.
just no way to prove that.
But outside of even just the legal context, I don't like using. I'm just saying I don't really like using those terms just generally. I mean, there's like you could say that like radical feminists are misandrist. Like they genuinely seem to hate men. And same thing for like you can tell when like you can speculate about someone being misogynist or misandrist, but I wouldn't want to label any particular behavior as misandrist or misogynist. Like it's just not like it doesn't seem to be that meaningful to me. Like you could say like you can say like, well, this person seems to hate women, or this person's like this feminist seems to hate men, and that's fair enough. But it's like the equality thing. It's like I just don't really.
Right.
It's just not. It doesn't get me impassioned in any way.
So let me actually. I'm going to try and make a defense for that comment. That is also going to apply to this hate crime being applied to misandry as well as misogyny.
Okay.
The reason why I think it's going to probably affect men more than women, and also the same is true of the advertising thing, is that I think that the feminist way of thinking, even for people who don't identify as feminists, is actually the mainstream common way of thinking. So Milo Yiannopoulos, and I'm just sort of giving a little bit of a setup. So Milo Yiannopoulos and lots of other sort of conservative people that are anti-feminist have said that feminism is losing power because here's a study that shows that very few people identify as feminists, right? Something like 20% of people.
I thought it was 7%.
It might even be lower. Maybe that's just women. I don't know. But it's a very low percentage. I think in the U.S. it might be something like 20%. But it's a really low number of people that when asked, do you identify as a feminist or do you see yourself as a feminist, they say yes. It's a very small number. However, I think that most people, and I mean the overwhelming majority of people, believe a lot of the things that feminism believes, even if they don't call themselves feminists. So if you asked most people, do you think that women, have been oppressed throughout history? Do you think that men have always run things? Do you think that that's unfair? Do you think the wage gap is real? Even some stuff that's been debunked over and over. Do you think, do you generally fear more for women on college campuses of being raped than men, and so on? Most people will agree with it. So
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, if we accept that the feminist narrative on things is the predominant narrative, even if most people don't identify as feminists. And then you look at who are going to be the people that will decide whether or not an advertisement is portraying negative female stereotypes versus negative male stereotypes. And they have that feminist ideology, that indoctrination, that programming, even if they don't think that they're feminists. And you also, those same people or people that believe the same are also deciding whether or not something is a misandrist hate crime or a misogynist hate crime. Then I think that based on that, people are going to generally ignore negative male stereotypes, and they're going to see more negative female stereotypes, even if
I think you're right about that.
I think that that's the reason why when he says, well, this is obviously going to impact women more than men, is because of the way that we see stereotypes around women versus stereotypes around men. We just tend to reframe it in a different way. And I think that is the same of making misandry a hate crime as well as misogyny. It will affect men less in terms of like them being seen as victims of misandry because people are not going to see that. And I think that that's a more than enough reason on its own to say, well, why don't we just dispense with the whole thing? Because it's not going to play out the way that, and in a way, it's like people know that that's true, and they'll just say for lip service, they'll say, well, we'll treat men the same. But the people making the decisions as to whether or not this qualifies as misandry or misogyny, it won't play out the same.
Yeah, I think that's it's like that's definitely, I think, true. I think that's definitely what we see in cases of divorce, like the judges that are giving the like sexist states, what do you call it, like they're giving women preferable treatment. They don't think of themselves as feminists, and they don't think of themselves as being preferential, but they are doing that. And I don't think it's all judges, but it seems to be that like they do have a preconceived notion about where the children should go, and like this part of the law is also part of that as well. But I think that's absolute, like, most of the divorces are between men and women, right? Because those are the people who get married the most. And like when you're trying to pick apart like who has done wrong to whom in this marriage, I think it's pretty much impossible for there not to let your own biases in there. And it's really difficult because I don't know how else we can do divorce unless we just make divorce illegal, which I think is a bad idea, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Yeah,
I don't want to get into divorce, like, because I know it's such a complex topic, but I think I just want to say that everything you said there, I think applies like even more, like, because we're talking about adverts, like it's really annoying, but I don't think it actually matters that much, like what we're doing with adverts, like the actual advert part, like even though it's like a tiny battle in a bigger culture war, like I don't really care about the adverts in and of itself, like, but the divorce thing is like, that's a really big issue, and it's like we can't just get rid of divorce. Like we've got to do something, but it's just really not obvious to me what we can do. I was just to agree with you.
No, it's okay. As I just so you know why I think that was said, but I mean I do. I'm sure that there are some people in the manosphere that whine and they find grievances and everything, and I try my hardest not to fall into that hole. I think that sometimes people want to hear me rant angrily about stuff that's happening because they get a little bit of catharsis from it. But usually, though, I mean, I'm an MRA that has no. I never been the victim of any of these issues. But I see that it's unfair. Yeah, I've never had to deal with child custody. I'm not circumcised. None of these things, right? I had my father for most of my life. I think fatherlessness is actually, for me, fatherlessness is one of the most important issues, as well as this discussion around toxic masculinity. It's like one of the things that really upsets me, because I think masculinity is it should be preserved. It should be admired in the same way that femininity is, while allowing for some wiggle room in between, because...
I mean, there's bad behavior that manifests more in men than women, and you can call that masculinity. But because it doesn't manifest in most men, I think that's actually a mischaracterization. But you know, it's just like you could say, like, you wouldn't call nagging part of femininity. It's like, that's not toxic femininity. That's like, that doesn't even make sense, really, like, to the ear. But if you can talk about aggression and violence and call it toxic masculinity, because it's like, well, men are doing this more, or like it's more observable in men, at least, right? Like, without doing that too much.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I found that comment that I mentioned. If you want to hear it.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It's 3 comments. This is on a video, by the way, that wasn't even about. It wasn't about men's rights. It was my most recent video about the concept of racism. It wasn't really about race or anything.
Oh, I watched that video actually earlier today. Go ahead.
So that's the context. This comment, I won't say who it's from. It says, "Isn't it really something when a hypocrite feminist in action, brackets, not wearing makeup, no doubt not shaving body hair, talking about how she friend zones guys and makes demands on them for her satisfaction, pretends to be anti-feminist in spirit and words, ultimately empty without actions to back it, and then preaches to this is in all caps, MRAs how she knows better. That was all one question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do all female MRAs try to hijack, all caps, men's rights? When do men represent themselves without scorn from women, all caps, question mark? This is the reply. the response underneath the comment from the same person.
Sure.
Apparently she can have it both ways, but no one else can. That's the title of the video, by the way, is racism, you can't have it both ways. So I guess that's what you're responding to. Apparently she can have it both ways, but no one else can. This is the final reply to their own comment. Where is this woman's theoretical husband anyway? Why doesn't he fight for men? This shit doesn't add up, and it's an obvious pattern in the women of men's rights activism. He's at home in the kitchen, cucking like a little mama's boy, white knight male feminist, letting his wife do the heavy lifting. I don't expect you to take responsibility for that just because this guy says he's an MRA. That's not I'm not trying to attack you with this. I really like to hear your thoughts because obviously people like this do exist who call themselves MRAs.
Sure. I'm looking at the comments too. I looked you up and I don't know who this person is. I think that that sounds like red pill rage and MGTOW commentary, in my opinion. But
what I don't understand is why he's so critical of my husband. He doesn't know anything about him. And then I thought these guys are supposed to be angry at women. Why is he angry at my husband? He spends more time he says more mean things about him than he does about me.
It's weird. I think I couldn't tell you. I don't think, and none of this stuff has anything to do with men's rights.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to.
But we do get. It's okay. We do. Well, I'll put it this way: the Honey Badgers is mostly women. It was started by women, and it's mostly women MRAs. I just happen to be the person that does a lot of the show production stuff. Because they are women and they need a guy to do this. No, I'm kidding. But it just so happens that I'm the guy who does it. But it is mostly women, and we do still occasionally get some angry MGTOW that go on there and they claim that these women are infiltrating the movement and that they're gonna, I don't know, the worm's gonna turn at some point, and so I don't know. I mean, you're just this sort of stuff's gonna happen. It can't really be helped. I don't agree with most of what he's saying, but he's entitled to have these opinions. Where does it come from? I think that men like this are generally very, very suspicious of women that advocate for men, and as strange as that is, and I think it's because they're afraid that there's some manipulation at work. For example, there are instances of women who see that there's this community of men that are trying to talk about their problems, and some of them are talking about relational problems, like they're incels or they're MGTOW, or whatever, and they're unhappy with their situation, or they're angry at the state of things, or they had bad experiences. And there are women, we would call them trad thoughts, that will come in and they will basically say, well, I'm one of the good women and I advocate for you and this is what I believe and I care about men. And it is usually to scoop up a husband, find someone, because maybe in the circles that we're traveling in, it didn't work out. But I don't think it's that common. And I think that we're looking at instances of outliers interacting with other outliers. And it sort of just stands out, So, and there is, I think that I would say that this sounds like MGTOW talk, but I want to say something in defense of MGTOW, okay? I think that what they believe in is, on some level, something that most men should, to some degree, adopt. And that is not to value women, to the point that they would be willing to
Self-destruction.
not to engage in self-destruction for female attention and approval. Okay, and I think that is a very, very good thing for men to do, and I think it's what MGTOW are doing really well. And I also believe that the majority of MGTOW that are engaging in that practice are not talking on the internet about women because they're being MGTOW, right? They're actually gone. So I got a super
chat.
I would
hope so.
Yeah. No, I would assume so. I'm fairly certain that that's true. So I got a couple of other super chats. Hoki Bukisa. Oh, and I'm sorry. Fillerator gives us $5 Canadian, so that's like $2 or something, and says, "I gotta go. Thanks for the stream. Cheers." Hoki Bukisa. Yes, thank you, Fillerator. Hoki gives us $5 and says, "It doesn't matter what the law says. What matters are the expectations of the society and the police and judges who selectively enforce the law." Yeah, those we were talking about the hate crime thing, which I think is what we're getting at. What were you?
Well, obviously the law doesn't mean anything if it's not enforced fairly, properly. That's not law if it's not being enforced. So
and you have to be
definitely something.
Yes, and you have to be very careful with definitions. I'm coming back to my words thing. I think words are absolutely crucial. Words have meanings, and I think that there is a serious twisting of words to move away from that. And I see that somebody's trying to get your attention. I know we've gone long. So
I'm trying to get some water, but I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying.
Oh, it's okay. And the last comment.
Water, please.
Now.
it's coming. Thank you.
It's okay. Hoki gives us another $5 and says, "Poe, that's called red pill rage. Men get their eyes open to things that they were ignorant to and go through a grief cycle and remain very suspicious." Yeah, I think that's what that is. And it's like usually when more women get involved, they become more suspicious. But I think that you're probably, I would say that you seem to me to be atypical. You remind me a lot of Alison and Karen, who are two of our badgers, and Hannah too. Just in the way that you, it is a compliment, yeah. Just in the way that you like you're not. First of all, you're already married, right? So you have no desire to, hook a man or get his attention, right? Secondly, you're not.
I wouldn't go on the internet if I was looking for a man, to be honest. I don't think that's a good idea.
See, that's well played. So like you got everything covered. You're just thinking about these issues, and I think you just like to engage in this sort of process. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really.
Look, he's real.
There, I saw his hand. No, I think I think that might be a puppet. So yeah. So no, she's not FL tourist. You can see that there's a hand there. So. Because there's a little bit of lag. Okay, so we've been talking for about a little over an hour and a half. Is there any other thoughts or anything else that you wanted to say that we didn't get to talk about?
No, I think that was everything actually. Well, yeah, we covered it all, I think.
Did you enjoy the conversation?
It was great. Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And guys that are watching, would you like it if I got Poe the person back on sometime to talk about other things? Because I know that we can probably get into conversations about all kinds of stuff. And also was I fair? Did I I didn't misrepresent any of your positions? Or
no. Like I said, you were talking in good faith, which is what I trusted you would from my previous interactions with you. Well, watching you, I mean. The other thing I was going to mention, if we did look for something to talk about, if we couldn't find anything to talk about, I was going to mention. I saw an article about in Italy they're now it says the first country to have paid period leave, which I guess is a day off every month for a woman to have her, the nastiness.
Well,
so that's something interesting, but I guess we're pretty out of time, so maybe I'll come back and talk about that another time.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that, or if something else happens. I mean, I'm always looking for things, people to talk to about stuff. So yeah, it looks like everyone likes you. So they're okay with having. One person said not sure if want, but mostly everybody else seems to like you. So yes, please bring her back again. Yeah, no, thank you. I thought it was a lot of fun. Yeah, no, these are mostly great people, mostly. Some of them are a bit sketchy, but whatever. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and that is so. I was just thinking about that. Daniel Morrill just gave me $2 and says, "Ask her to do a live stream with Alce Void." You know what? I actually do. You know who Alce Void is?
Yeah. I've been tweeting the other day. Like, I've been trying to get her. Like, she used to have less subscribers than me, and I was trying to get her on my channel, but she's too busy, man. That girl, she's so busy.
I could try her again. I had her on once a while back when she was still small. Yeah, before PewDiePie basically shot her into the stratosphere. But I could try to get you both on. I think that'd be awesome. I was you remind me of her in a lot of ways. So I was thinking that. So maybe I will see if I can I'll try to set something up. I think that the three of us would have a great conversation. So
yeah, well, you can try, but yeah, good luck with that.
Well, I don't know. I got Owen Benjamin on. I got David Jaffe, the creator of God of War, on. I've got him on a couple of times. Maybe I can work some magic.
PewDiePie never mentioned those guys.
Yeah, well, it's because he doesn't have the taste that I have. But with that said, I am going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you so much, Poe the person, for coming on.
Yeah,
you guys
thank you.
Follow her on Twitter and also subscribe to her YouTube channel. I put the link in there. She's well on her way to making great videos, and I have a feeling that she's going to blow up. And I tell you this honestly. I'm going to tell you this is a secret, okay? Every person that I've brought on that has had a small channel has become enormous afterwards, like always outgrowing us. I'll give you an example. Blair White, I had her on when she only had 12,000 subscribers. And I knew her from Facebook, and I didn't know that she was going to blow up, but she did. Sargon of Akkad, we had him on when he was really small too, like years ago. Just blew up. Like Theron Meyer also blew up. Lauren Southern also blew up. We had plenty of people that have like had really small channels that had become so big they didn't even do YouTube anymore. Like Lauren Southern's just making movies now. So yeah, I mean, you've just gotten the golden touch of Midas from me. And don't forget me when you've gotten to like 300,000 subs and you're on Steven Crowder or something. So
I'll come back anytime, all right?
Okay. All right. Thank you guys for coming on again. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think about the conversation. Anything you want to say to Poe, say what you like.
I'll read the comments.
Yeah. And if you guys have any red pill rage, just put it in there. I'm sure that she'll love to read that too. Yeah.
I read it to my husband.
Also, give this video a like, and it really helps us out with our analytics. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Go over to the Badger live streams and sub us there, and sub Poe as well. Thank you again for coming on this episode of the Fireside Chat. I'll talk to you guys very soon. Thank you.